Okay. What's up, everyone? Today, I want to talk to all of the mages of New World. All right. A lot of mages are pretty upset right now, and I'm just going to say that I really am not. So here's my problem, right? Firestaff and Ice Gauntlet, I don't think is supposed to be good for everything. This is a game where there is no attribute requirement to use any weapon. So basically, because in our attribute tree here, we see that intelligence is mainly going to give us damage on fire staff and ice gauntlet. A lot of people will exclusively use these two weapons, and I know that a lot of people who use intelligence and use fire staff are not using rapier or musket in any circumstance because I don't know, I guess because they want to be a mage. Now for me, what makes me a mage is the fact that the fire staff is literally such a good weapon, the fact that you have abilities that have super short cooldowns compared to every other class pretty much, and you have mana regeneration, you have a high amount of damage, and you have an escape mechanic with the burnout ability. The fire staff is literally one of the few weapons that feels like it does almost everything. Okay, and that's what makes me a mage personally. So when I mess around and I use fire staff with rapier or musket, what I'm doing is I'm filling out something that I need for different circumstances. So to the people who use fire staff and ice gauntlet and feel like being mage is going to be useless now because they're both being nerfed, I challenge you to please use the fire staff or the ice gauntlet. Primarily, I think the fire staff is better, and try out some different secondaries. First, try out using the rapier and musket as a secondary since they secondarily scale with intelligence. But I've already been working outside of the box even further and utilizing some items that don't scale with intelligence at all. For two reasons. For one, you can socket any weapon with a gem that will give you more damage based off of your intelligence. So as you can see here, I will salvage this. The thing is that even though this bow isn't optimized at all, I can still hit over 4,000 damage with it, which makes it more than good enough to do some solo runs, just kill animals out in the wild and kill random corrupted enemies and stuff like that, and keep them off of you. Now, I wouldn't use it in a group setting just because I feel like I am gimping my team. It's just not as effective as any of the intelligence scaling weapons. But in the open world, it's something that's fun. And it's something that I just tested to see how effective it could pair with either the fire staff or the ice gauntlet. But I want people to think more outside the box. All right. So if you don't know, even though there hasn't been patches to the game recently, there has been a lot of developers talking on intended changes and changes that they're testing. And a lot of people are really riled up about these changes. If you want me to go over some of these developer blogs that are going out, they're telling these updates before patches actually come out, let me know in the chat. So here are some of the changes to Firestaff. I'm going to go over the changes, and then I'm going to go over how I feel about those changes and why I feel like most people are looking at things all wrong. All right. So Fireball can no longer crit. This is probably one of the worst changes that are coming to the Firestaff, one of the worst nerfs, because Fireball is obviously a really good ability. It's basically a must take on any Fire Staff user, especially in the case of wars. Fireball just does a ton of very consistent damage. The problem is right now we are using Spellslinger, which increases your ability's chance to crit by 15%. And the idea that we have crit on our abilities and we have something that increases the crit chance, and you're just going to completely take out the ability to crit with the whole ability is actually pretty bad. I think it's a pretty questionable change, but ultimately I still think Fireball is going to be something that most fire mages are going to take just because the damage is so good, period. The burn damage and the impact damage is still high even if you don't crit. Over 50% mana passive nerfed. 10% power goes to 5% in power. So that's another 5% just taken right off our overall damage, over 50%. Bonus ability crit chance passive nerfed 15% crit to 10% crit. No damage taken in for 3 seconds. Bonus damage passive nerfed 10% to 5%. Holding fire staff crit damage passive nerfed 20% to 15%. Rune of Helios bonus damage nerfed 30% to 25%. So if you don't know, Rune Helios is is this a trait right here, which you can see I don't even take right now. Personally, I think Rune of Helios is kind of a death wish. It creates a really small circle that you have to stand within in order to benefit from a damage boost to your spells. And as soon as I see Runes of Helios on the ground, I will immediately focus abilities right on top of it. And I know that some Great Axe users and stuff like that are becoming accustomed to that, throwing gravity wells in the directions of this thing. I think it's actually too small to actually be useful. Like, obviously 30% damage is a lot, but the range that it makes you stay within and how noticeable it is for anyone to see that this is up is what I think makes it kind of weak. Any ability that really makes me need to be in a more dangerous area than I already am just for playing a fire mage, I'm not really that interested in. So I've been just experimenting with other smaller traits to see how they would feel over something like Runes of Helios. I understand if you take it, but personally, I don't think it's as good as it seems. I honestly think the change they should have made is increasing the overall ground that it covers when it's activated. So to actually like decrease the damage from 30% to 25% from the Runes of Helios, I think it is a little bit odd. Flamethrower base damage increased 34% to 50%. I think that's good. I think Flamethrower could have some real potential as a good ability, but right now the amount of damage it does and how slow it makes you is just not worth it. Damage when under 50% max HP passive nerf 20% to 15%. Pillar of Fire base damage buffed to 134% to 170%. This is good. I think Pillar of Fire should be really strong. And right now, what makes it strong is the fact that it'll hit 2 to 3 times sometimes on certain enemies. And when that doesn't happen, it can feel pretty lackluster for the fact that it keeps you in place when you're casting it, and it's a really small Pillar of Fire. Singe / watch it burn swap places makes it harder to reach Rune of Helios. Okay, I think that's fine. So it seems like the reason that they reduce the damage from Rune of Helios is because they want to see more people use the other ability here, Reheat. The problem is I don't think that the issue is that Runes of Helios is too strong. I think the issue is that Reheat is way too weak. After 6 seconds without activating a Fire Staff ability, your mana regen is increased by 400%. Is just really not useful at all when we already have abilities that have your heavy attacks restore your mana, and heavy attacks reduce Fire Staff cooldowns, and heavy attacks no longer consume mana. The Fire Staff doesn't really have any mana problems, so I really just don't need Reheat. I think that they should actually just rework the whole ability, put a new ability here, something that's actually more useful. If I really wanted mana this badly, I would just drink a mana pot. I think that this ability is bad, and I think that incentivizing people to use a worse ability by nerfing the good ability is just a bad like mentality around balancing. When you make the only good thing less good, it makes the game less fun for people playing it, period. So I'm also going to go over the Ice Gauntlet changes just because most people are pairing the Fire Gauntlet exclusively with the Ice Gauntlet. So Ice Shower cooldown increased 20 seconds to 30 seconds. Now this is something that I believe is currently being overutilized right now. People are using it like very aggressively, where I think that's not really how it's intended to be used. Just based off of the nature of like how slowly you cast it and how small of a range it covers, and how effective it can be at keeping people off of you. 20 seconds to 30 seconds, I really don't think has a huge impact on PvP fighting at all. The biggest issue with this, and I don't know if this is something that the developers are thinking of, but it really lowers the effectiveness of the Ice Gauntlet in invasions. So I'll probably put a video up on how I control invasions as a fire and ice mage, because the Ice Shower is one of the most effective abilities in invasions, and I'm not seeing it utilized very much. But the problem with it being to 30 seconds is with that cooldown, I feel like I'm going to need to have 2 fire and ice mages on every door and have them coordinate who's using Ice Shower when, so that it can be used every time that it would be effective. So I think that this really nerfs invasions a lot more than any PvP type of situation. Wind Chill base damage increased 16% to 20%. Wind Chill, which is kind of, you know, they're buffing it so that more people utilize it. I don't think 4% damage is enough to get people to utilize it. Bonus crit damage at full stamina reduced 15% to 10%. This is another thing that I don't understand why they're doing it. This only really affects like people who are doing damage for free and not being focused down, who are able to maintain full stamina while they're casting their abilities. I think that's the point of being a mage in general, is being able to put down a lot of damage if no one's focusing you or preventing you from doing that damage. So I don't really know why that change would be a thing. Ice Storm damage ticks 3 times a second instead of 4 times a second. Okay, so this is something that sucks. They don't really make it clear if those 3 ticks are going to equal the damage that the 4 ticks would be doing, but I'm assuming that it's reducing the damage by 25% basically, which is something that I think, you know, kind of sucks, probably feel bad, but Ice Storm is another ability that I think people are overutilizing just because of how strong it is currently. So the way that the Ice Gauntlet really plays is really off of this little ability right here. Incoming damage is increased by 10% for 3 seconds to enemies in Ice Storm if below 50% health. And this is the most effective way I've seen to be able to use the Ice Gauntlet. I will also be putting out videos soon that will showcase how I utilize these items in war if you really want to see firsthand what I'm talking about here. But the way that I believe the Fire Staff and the Ice Gauntlet is supposed to be used, and it currently is the most effective showcase of how it's used, is using the Fire Staff to get the enemies below 50% health, and then using the Ice Storm to kind of kill them and finish them off. The problem is that the spell is so good that they will literally just use it from long range to any enemy. It doesn't matter how long they're stuck in it because they're going to take a lot of damage. And so I think that some of the changes they're making are going to feel bad as far as like just doing a ton of damage is fun. But I think it's warranted, and I think they are accomplishing a goal successfully. Ultimate Chill nerfed from 35% damage to 25%. Yeah, I think maybe I can see that being a thing. Heavy Freeze roots now have a 5-second cooldown. If you don't know, Heavy Freeze, heavy attacks will freeze a target if hit in Ice Storm or with Frostbite for 1 second. I think this is a good thing too. I think Heavy Freeze was stupid good, and that's what was making Ice Gauntlet really good in duels and in 1v1 scenarios. And again, I just don't think that was the intentions for the Ice Gauntlet for the developers. So look, here's the thing. As I look through the comments and I read how people feel about the changes that are coming, it makes me upset. And it makes me upset because the Amazon Game Studios have proven to be listening to their community, right? And that's both a good and a bad thing. When you listen to the community, when you listen to the high numbers of complaints or suggestions that people are giving you, the high amounts of feedback that the average players are giving you, sometimes those opinions are not correct, okay? Especially in a game that just hasn't been out for that long. I really do not think anyone has anything fully figured out. There are ways to abuse the fact that we can hold 2 weapons at a time so much more than we are currently abusing. Now, I plan on showing a lot of gameplay on how I deal with certain issues that people in the comments are saying that they have, because I didn't realize how many fire mages are literally just holding the Ice Gauntlet secondary and are determining how good a mage is based off of just that. As odd as it sounds, a mage is not just someone who uses the Fire Staff and Ice Gauntlet and uses magic spells. Because this is a game where there is no requirement to use any weapon, if you want to put on an Orichalcum Warhammer, you just need to be level 60, okay? You don't need 100 strength to be able to wield a Warhammer. Right now, as a fire mage, you can go Fire Staff Warhammer if you really wanted to. And sure, your Warhammer won't do the amount of damage that you're seeing other Warhammers do, but you still have access to 3 abilities that are outside of your Fire Staff. So for example, why have I not seen someone go with a Great Axe or Sledgehammer secondary off of their Fire Staff and use some of the CC abilities from those weapons in order to stack more of their Fire Staff damage? A lot of people have a lot of complaints about numbers and intended changes without actually just thinking about a way to work around those things or think about why those are actually problems. And the fact that people who have barely experimented at all have a problem with balance changes. Look, it makes me upset because it is easily what could make this game go down the drain. And I'm very familiar with this issue because I played a lot of League of Legends. And League of Legends is a strictly like PvP type of game with characters with different abilities, and it's a dev team that updates regularly and listens to community feedback. And the problem is that the average base of the community are people who only play one character, or they don't have a lot of knowledge in the game. They don't have full understanding of all of the different components and way to utilize different things within the game. So a lot of people will make suggestions to make certain things stronger or weaker, when really the issue is the player's ability to recognize how to avoid what's too strong or mitigate what's too weak on their own. Another thing that a lot of people are complaining about, especially mages and healers, is the fact that in the dev post, there are actual buffs going out to the Warhammer and Great Axe. And I see a lot of people saying that the Warhammer and Great Axe are already the best weapons in the game, and the fact that you're going to make them stronger is just a complete disconnect with the community. Now, as a fire mage, when this game first came out, I said the same thing. The Great Axe and the Warhammer were too strong and they need to nerf it. And I do believe they're strong, but I think what really makes them feel too strong is how easy it is for them to pull off the things that they're pulling off. But when I gained more experience, I learned how to avoid Great Axe and Warhammers and sword and shield users, and hatchets were really the only thing that are really deadly for me, right? But the problem is that people just aren't playing it right. If I'm gonna 1v1 someone who has a Great Axe with a Warhammer, my secondary is not gonna be an Ice Gauntlet. Right? You have to recognize like the Ice Gauntlet is supposed to be for AoE situations. It's like the Ice Gauntlet could be fun to verse the Great Axe and Warhammer with, especially if you get your abilities off. It feels really good. But honestly, it's a lot more effective and reliable to use like a Rapier secondary in that instance. If I'm setting up a 1v1 duel and I see they have any melee weapon, I'm putting Fire Staff primary, Rapier secondary. And that way, if I get stuck in AoE, I have the burnout. I have the burnout ability from the Fire Staff as the movement ability. I have the Fletche or Fletcher, whatever, however the hell you want to pronounce it, with the Rapier that allows me to get out of gravity wells or create distance. And I also have the Riposte on the Rapier in case I'm in a situation where I can't get out any other way. The Rapier has great single target damage, and it can really burst down, and it always surprises melee users when I take out the Rapier and I start doing a ton of melee damage to them. They almost always are like in shock at that point, and it's a lot of fun. I already don't think the Ice Gauntlet is very effective in these smaller situations. And I think the fact that they're making the Ice Gauntlet weaker is really an attempt to get people away from using the Fire Staff and Ice Gauntlet all of the time. I don't think any two weapons are supposed to be all of the time this is the most effective combination. And I understand how that upsets some people. Some people just want to play Mage, I get it. And for that, you have the Void Gauntlet to look forward to, which is coming out in the next patch, which will be an intelligence scaling item that will also do damage. But look, I expected to go off on this video on some of the comments that I saw. But I think what I'll do, what I think will be more useful for the viewers, is I'm just going to record and live stream, some of the gameplay I have in the next wars I get into, maybe some duels and some outpost rush, and kind of show you guys how I play it without the Ice Gauntlet, and how I mitigate a lot of the issues that people are talking about with certain weapons being too overpowered, just by switching things up that do different jobs than the Ice Gauntlet. I really only think the Ice Gauntlet is super effective, like always super effective, must take in wars and invasions. I think that we're already still in a spot where things aren't fully sorted out. People don't fully understand anything yet. And I do think it's weird to put out these types of buffs and nerfs so early on in the game. I think what they should be focusing on is really quality of life improvements. I mean, come on, can I please have a grouping for different things in here so that I can just double click one single thing and have all of my mining luck? There's a ton of quality of life things that I think would make the game more enjoyable than trying to tweak combat at a time in the game where I don't think combat is fully figured out yet. I also have some similar feelings about the people in the healer role who are complaining about some of the changes that are that are coming their way, which I might touch on in the future. But right now, this just makes me upset because these are my brethren, the other mage users, and you guys haven't recognized how good it is. I mean, the fire staff is amazing. Intelligence is amazing. I hope you guys explore some of your options a little bit more and understand that these nerfs do not make mages or fire staffs useless. Now, I still think we're going to be really strong, but I guess we'll just have to wait and see. Have a good year.